Of Gunpoint. This is Sean and Jackson or Ark, whatever I want to be called that day, I guess. And
I pretty much never refer to you by your internet handle.
oh, I know,
I hope that's fine.
I know. Mm, just having a good sip of water right there. Anyway,
I've
uh,
decided it's fine.
right. There's only like 7 people that work on this game, but we're scrolling the credits at the speed of snails, so it'll take about a half an hour to finish.
Not as speed of snail as I thought we were going to be, but oh well.
Yeah, this is still going a bit faster than yeah. But just like last time, we wanted to really sit back and discuss, have a little quick discussion about this game and some of its strengths, and honestly, it really doesn't have whole lot of weaknesses in my perspective. So, but still, any weaknesses it may have.
So Jackson has a whole annotated list here, so I think he wants to start.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll start with the worst of it because it's really not that much bad to talk about. Just kind of like how the last time. Firstly, question to you, Sean: how much do you want to do like a compare and contrast as opposed to like trying to really keep this lasered in on this one game?
I mean, I don't know what we can compare and contrast between Final Fantasy VIII and Gunpoint, but
Right. I just mean like I've already said phrases like "unlike last time" or stuff like that, referencing.
no, I mean, if there are relevant comparisons to be made, then absolutely we should make them,
Mm,
but I don't think there are any for Gunpoint and Final Fantasy.
okay. All right. So unlike last time where we had to try to spend an effort to focus on the good part, I think it's really easy to just get some bad stuff out of the way because there's really not that much. This game is overall really good from my perspective. Being the only really bad things I saw were like how difficult it was to set up this game. Like there aren't a lot of options as far as like turning down your anti-aliasing and your all the other stuff like that. Um, so if your game lags, uh, you really just got to hit the forums and look up like, hey, what are the magic, what's the secrets of the trade to get this thing to run
Well,
smoothly?
that's the issue. Like, this is such a low. This is not a demanding game at all, or it shouldn't be,
It
and
shouldn't be.
so
Yeah. I don't
it
think it
has no
is.
reason to have, like, robust uh, video settings. It's just technically weak.
Yeah,
The code is bad.
yeah, I think so. And honestly, I'm not sure if and I wouldn't mind knowing this, whether the creator of the game is more of a like artistic type or if he's like just like definitely like an engineer programmer type. It's all done basically by one guy. I mean, he had help, I think, a little bit, but for the music. Um,
I mean, we're watching the whole fucking credits list,
these are all joke credits right here.
but but there was like legitimate other stuff though.
Oh
He
yeah,
did
yeah,
he did the writing, the programming, and the design.
yeah. So I wonder if he's more on the writing side because the writing is honestly gold. So, but anyway, so that was one of my few big grievances about this was just trying to set this up with like video capturing stuff. Oh
Yeah, we
boy.
almost didn't do this game because we could not get it to run smoothly in the recording software. We have something like 7 false starts where we were just trying to get this game to run in such a way that the capture got more than like half of the frames.
Yeah, which is why if you're watching through the video and at the very end I ruin our little sign off, but by being like, by the way, here are the stats about the dropped frames. That's because I was really excited about the fact that it actually performed really well in the end. Because oh boy, that was a miniature journey right there. So yeah, that was But otherwise, and the only other thing that I really had to disconnect with on this game was the rewarding system, which I loved actually, because at the end of the missions they give you a grade. They give you like A, B, A plus, whatever. And it just seemed like regardless of what I do, it's not entirely true, but I would just perform. I would think I'd perform terribly and get an A plus, or think I did pretty okay and get like a C. And I think there was one time that like it was like optional parameter or whatever. Don't do a lot of violence, and then I got like psychopath or something like that, an A plus. Cool. So
Yeah, it's really bizarre. It makes no sense what the like, grading system is based on.
Mm-hmm. I just like that when it says client's rating, like A plus or whatever, it's like, this is what the client thinks about you. Well, apparently she loves it when I murder the shit out of people.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Or something.
Right.
In any event, I think the more specific metrics of how violent were you and how many witnesses did you leave, like, those are so much better
Mm-hmm.
than the grade. The grade doesn't matter at all.
Right.
The grade doesn't matter. The grade's not significant, but also it doesn't tell you as the player anything. So those other metrics are cool because they encourage kind of different styles of play and give you some sense of how you engaged with the level. But the grade is just like, it doesn't say anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but that, honestly, as it is, that is everything bad I can think about this game. Like I got all the bad stuff out of the way just because all the rest of this discussion is just going to be me singing its praises, really. So
I have one thing. The one thing that I really have that I want to talk about
mm-hmm.
is potentially bad. I think I can see why they did it, but it's potentially bad.
Okay.
But I don't know. You can continue with your things, or I can start off on that.
Well, sure. I'll give my biggest song and dance of the praises, which is really the comedy and the dialogue in this game. Like, this game is a puzzle game, kind of. You can treat it like a puzzle game, or well, or you can play it like how I played it. But this game, I think, is its dialogue. Personally, I think is its strongest point. Like, the puzzles are okay, but you're really just trying to get that sweet nectar, which is the hilarious dialogue. I'm just gonna leave it on this screen now, so you don't even need to watch this anymore. You can just phase out to our soothing tones. Anyway, back to
you didn't have to watch it in the first place.
You had to watch it in the first place. Anyway, so Gunpoint really, really got me good, like, with a lot of its stuff. I was having a hell of a time beating the shit out of people because I got such entertainment out of the dialogue for that, and the third option of everything Conway says is gold. And like, thank you for giving my crisis a difficulty curve and stuff like that.
Yeah, this game's self-awareness is incredible. It does such a good job of self-aware humor.
Mm-hmm. And at one point, because it really sets itself up as a serious game that the main character just kind of makes fun of his own situations. Like, like these are like, he's in a bad spot because he's gonna get framed for a murder he didn't do, or he might also end up getting someone else framed for the murder they didn't do. Which, when you think about it, actually is rather dark. We
Yeah.
had, in our run, we had a character commit suicide. Spoilers, by
That's
the way.
the thing. That's what I was gonna get into later.
Okay. Um, well, do you want to pivot off that, or should I finish? Up to you, man.
Go ahead and finish.
Okay. But yeah, so I think dialogue and comedy is its single strongest point. Like, unlike when we were playing Final Fantasy VIII, which I'll admit, Final Fantasy VIII not a comedy. Yeah, I mean, Squall's not Squall's not rattling off jokes in the corner. But whenever I really thought something was funny in that game, or whenever I thought something was really funny, because I had some genuine laughs, it's usually just Sean saying something really funny, or Sean and I bouncing back something really silly off each other,
Right.
like
And there were occasionally things that were funny, that were actually intentionally funny, but yeah.
right. Those were the rarities, and I get it. Final Fantasy is not a comedy game. Gunpoint is is definitely a comedy game. It does its genre justice because it's noir, it's mystery, and it's seriously good comedy. So that is my strongest praise for this game. Do you want to take over after that, or am I just gonna?
Sure.
Okay.
So there's this kind of philosophy I have toward the content in games. You can think of it kind of like a rating system. You know how anytime a rating system gives a piece of media a rating and says it's rated this because of, this reason, that reason, this reason, and that reason. Like, these are the specific things that are in this piece of media that give it this rating.
Right, like rated M for mature for violence and implied other violence.
Right, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I really, rating systems aside, I really think that analyzing the content of a piece of media in that way is really important, because each of those things comes at a cost.
Okay.
Anytime you include content that is potentially upsetting, it comes at a cost of, this is something that that is going to upset people, whether that's indignation or just people who are sensitive to that subject, or just in general darkening the tone of your work. It comes at some kind of cost, and before including anything like that, you have to consider what you get in exchange for that cost. And Gunpoint is an interesting case study in that for me, because the tone takes a huge nosedive at the end with Katie's death.
Yeah.
Because although people had died plenty of times in this game, and although people had killed each other plenty, suicide is a very different thing, and that is a major kind of I really need a good buzzword for this. Upsetting content that to put in without without getting something big in return, and I don't know that Gunpoint does, because if you take a step back, okay, the tone takes this huge nosedive, and that allows the final mission to have a little bit more weight. But that's the only thing I can think of that Katie's suicide gives this game. because otherwise that's the end of that story arc. Like, she's just gone, and that's done and over with, and you move on.
Right, because...
And that's not a satisfying conclusion to that story arc, and it doesn't contribute to any kind of character development or any kind of overarching theme. It just happens and then it's gone.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think that that's actually a misstep by this game. I don't think that there's any reason for Katie, in fiction, sure, but in terms of a piece of media that was put together by somebody, there's no reason to have Katie kill herself. I don't think you gain enough in exchange for that.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's... So a couple things with that, and I'll go back with you on that point. So quickly, actually, I did just look it up. Apparently, off of like 3 Google searches in like 15 seconds, there's no way to save her. So it's not like we did a bad branching path. She's just gonna die regardless of which path you take. It's almost like, this is a bad way to phrase it. So there's no better. I'm trying to think of a better way. It's almost like a Romeo and Juliet kind of thing where like they all kind of like everything's slightly mistimed. It's like, come on, dude, if you waited like 5 more seconds, it's cool. Don't kill yourself.
Right, that's true.
And because that's the thing is like she was about to be let go. Like you had just basically found out for sure she's not the killer. I mean, you knew she wasn't, but like you just found out like for sure she's not. And then immediately after that, it's just like, by the way, you know that happy ending you're about to give her? Nope, she's dead.
Yeah, you just don't get to have any kind of positive outcome to this story.
Yep.
For no particular reason. It's a lighthearted story, but fuck you anyway.
Yeah, and I think... So here's my shot at defense for this game. Because you're talking about what does it buy. I think what it buys is that it sticks to the genre it really wants to be. Because when you listen to the music, and I know that when we're playing together you don't actually get to listen to the music, I mean, it is kind of a dark noir tone. I think really this game wants to be a dark comedy, which is why all of Conway's...
But there's nothing comedic about her suicide.
Right, but I think that's...
If they could have spun that into something humorous, then that could have worked for it, but they don't.
Right, but it just reminds me of... No, I've definitely shown you this before. It goes back to when we were in high school, like 10 years ago. Do you remember the play The Pillow Man?
Yeah.
Plug your ears if you don't... If you're really interested in reading The Pillow Man or seeing the play, to anyone that ever watches this, plug your ears now. But, yeah, I mean, The Pillow Man was also a dark comedy where the entire time, like, it was really funny, some of the things that they were doing, because it was just an inspector or an investigator torturing and interrogating the main character. And, you know, at one point, I think there was one of the lines was just like, where the main character is just like, hey, can I be honest with you? And the investigator's just like, yeah, sure, we're gonna shoot you in the end regardless, so why not? Say whatever. So it kind of, it flirts with it, and him being killed is almost a joke, except they actually follow through with it at the very end. It's kind of a dark comedy, and then they
right,
actually...
but that's the culmination of a relationship between those two characters. I think that interaction loses its weight. It loses its value if he doesn't actually follow through.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying.
But there's no development of any kind of relationship. There's no character interaction that's benefited by Katie killing herself.
Right.
She doesn't have enough of a personal character arc for that to be... She has just enough of a personal character arc for it to be believable that she would do it. And not enough for anything more than that. Not enough for it to add value.
No, you're right, because I remember the 2 lines, like, because right before Melanie Rook was talking about, like, it's like, we can't tell Katie that we're doing any of this because she feels guilty if I buy her a coffee. So it kind of set up, like, what Katie's personality type is. I mean, she's the happy, bubbly girl, but, you know, she's very she is very guilty, a very guilty person. So it was true to her character, but you're right, there really wasn't any payoff as far as, like, because even Conway, because, you know, you could kind of headcanon, like, maybe Conway and Katie, you know, but no, there really wasn't anything.
Conway doesn't react at all.
Yeah, well, he says, like, or one of his options is just like, shit. And I think that's pretty much it. Like, he just kind of, he does.
And that's the one we said. Like, we picked the most serious reaction to that, and it's still, the game still just moves on.
Yeah, you're right.
And he doesn't even refer to it in the epilogue. Like, it's as though it never happened.
Yeah, I guess that means that Katie wasn't that important to him after all. Which is unfortunate.
Right, and she's not that important to the plot. So, like, why bother having her kill herself?
Why bother?
She could have,
yeah.
She could have easily gone free, and that could have been a silver lining to this whole thing. Or she could have been killed by somebody else to deepen the plot. Like,
well,
I feel like any other outcome to her personal situation would have benefited the story more.
I think I'm still okay with it because of the fact that think about what really good things happen to anybody else. Like, I mean, I guess besides Rook, hers is bittersweet. Like, you kill her husband, and no, you don't kill her husband. You kill Kessler. But, like, you pretty much, like, ruin her husband, and yeah, she gets her company, she gets power, and that's the best case scenario. Who even knows?
Right, and I'm not saying, but that's kind of what I'm saying, is the story doesn't have to have exclusively negative outcomes.
Yeah.
That's why I said that her escaping could have been a silver lining. Like, everything sucked, I killed all these people, but hey, at least Katie gets to live a somewhat normal life after all this.
That's a good point.
If she can.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Also, let's take a second to recognize the fact that I hilariously slaughtered like 10 people at least. More like 20. I mean, I punched them to death. Happily.
Yeah.
But that's where that's the kind of separation of game mechanics to story elements. I mean, care.
It's not just that though, because people die in the story all the time. It's like I said, people being murdered is introduced at the very beginning, and it is essential for the game to even take place. Like,
true.
If murder didn't exist in the story, there would not be a story, because the entire game and plot revolves around a murder mystery.
Yeah, you're right.
And you could potentially get through the game without killing anybody yourself, but the plot at the very least requires people to die.
Yeah.
And to be murdered specifically. But suicide is such a specific, different thing than that, and like lumping them all together as people dying is exactly the kind of overgeneralization that leads to including elements that unnecessarily damage the tone of the work.
Yeah, okay.
The tone is so much unnecessarily darker during that sequence because of her suicide, and then it just moves on.
Yeah.
Okay. And you never get anything out of it, the tone having been darkened that much.
Yeah. I'll concede your point. That's, yeah.
So, that's
it's
a sticking point for me because I've seen a few games do things like that, and I feel like it's something I've never heard people talk about, but to me it's a really important aspect of analyzing a narrative, and I feel like it's easy to misconstrue as like, oh, I'm being PC, but that's not the issue. I have no problem with including like things like suicide in the story. It's just that you have to earn them, and I don't think this game earns it.
Yeah, because not with Katie. She wasn't. I mean, she was important for a while, but she wasn't central enough. Which I guess kind of leads me to the question: was there anybody, Rook maybe, that was central enough that if they committed suicide, you'd be like, shit, what?
I mean, I think that it could have been any of the characters. It just needed to be followed up on. They needed to do something with it.
Right.
Because even Rook, if Rook had killed herself and then we just moved on, then it still wouldn't matter.
Yeah, just say shit and then go.
And then continue trying to get yourself from getting arrested. Like, yeah, that wouldn't be.
There really is a genuine separation between game mechanics and narrative, because you're trying to not get arrested for being framed for killing one person, while you slaughtered like 20 trying to do it. Man. Boy, oh boy. I guess I'm just a monster.
You are a monster. You know this well.
Yeah, I do. But yeah, so would you say on the whole, like critique and analysis of games is important, because it helps us improve upon our tastes and recommendations, and the biggest ideal being that when we learn lessons, the game community learns and makes better stuff. All that huge statement was to say, do you think that specific critique dampens the game to the point where you did not enjoy it so much? Or what are your thoughts?
No, this is a great game.
Okay.
I think that's a pretty big issue, but it's a pretty big issue in a game that's otherwise great.
Okay. Yeah.
And a great experience is not ruined by one bad thing. Okay.
Yeah, I guess what it should have just drilled immediately too was like how bad was this one thing compared to the experience on the whole. And
I'll put it this way, if I was to give this game a rating on a scale of 1 to 10, that critique would probably drop it by 1 point.
Okay, so like this game's now like an 8.5 out of 10 kind of deal.
Or something.
Oh, you wouldn't say 8.5?
I mean, it's a great game, but it's not that substantial.
Okay.
Like, there's not a whole lot to master mechanically. There's not a whole lot to dig into thematically. Yeah. It's just a fun time.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's kind of shallow.
Yeah, I guess you're right. As it is,
so, I think I would give it like a 7 on the whole.
Yeah. I probably would say an 8. I mean, I really had a great time playing this game. I mean, I was laughing at pretty much every joke, and honestly, I mean, it may have been painful for you to watch, but I enjoy playing the way that I do.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun game.
Yeah.
A 7 is a good score. That's the thing that, I mean, this is one of the many issues with numerical rating systems, but there's this misconstruction, I guess?
Yeah, misconstruction.
Misconstruation. That...
Don't do that.
I'm sorry, I'm misconstruating this week. What was I saying? That, like, people conflate a 1 to 10 rating system for media with a grade like you would get in school.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's like, 60%, that's terrible. But the reason that kind of grading system exists in school is because it's a literal representation of what percentage of the information you got correct.
Yeah.
And if you only got 60% of the information correct, that's terrible.
Yeah.
In terms of like something you're supposed to have mastered. But that's not a useful metric for game for like critiquing media, because if 60% is bad, then there's just very little room for distinction between things that are good.
Right.
So
yeah.
5 is mediocre. 5 is a game that I didn't dislike, but I didn't particularly like. So 7, that's a good game.
Yeah.
That's a solidly good game.
I guess you could look at it like percentiles. Like 7 means you're in the top 30 percentile. Like you're better than, equal to or better than like 70% of the games out there that we've experienced.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and I think when you look at it in that way, then it makes sense when I say that I give this game a 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
That's a compliment.
Yeah. Boy, thinking back to Final Fantasy VIII on the 1 to 10 scale, like a 3. 2.5.
I, honest to God, don't know if I would even give it a 3.
Ooh, that's right. I mean, that's true. You since like episode 5 of that stream, I went back and saw it. You started saying I hate this game like 5 episodes into our 15 episode series. Oh boy.
And that's still back when we were doing my favorite thing. Right. or at least in proximity to my favorite thing in that game.
The Cypher and Skull. Yeah. I remember. Okay, so yeah, 7. I would still probably give it even higher than that, because maybe it's just because I really like this style of game.
Yeah, but that's totally subjective. Like,
yeah, I'd probably say, with putting it in perspective of just how we kind of defined the 1 to 10 scale, maybe not an 8, but like 7.5. Yeah, 7. It's in this top 75%, or yeah.
You mean the top 25%?
There we go.
Yep. The top 75% is pretty bad.
Yep. So the top 25% of the games I've played, I can genuinely.
The top 75% is roughly where Final Fantasy VIII is today. For you. Right. For me, I don't think it even quite makes it that high.
Oh god. Yeah, that's the. Oh man, I'll still never get over throwing chocobos at the final boss. Whew. But yeah, so for Gunpoint, one of my other big points of positivity towards it is the style of play, because this game is supposed to be a puzzle game, and there are a decent amount of mechanics to it. I don't use very many of them. I jump at the enemies, and I get them to jump off the roof, and I punch them 10 times, at least.
Yeah, I mean, and this is... I really think that's a great trait of this game's. Like, it really allows for a lot of freedom in how you interact with its puzzles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there are still definitely puzzles in it, because there were once or twice I kind of sat there like, okay, really, what am I supposed to do? And then I realized just like missed a detail here or there. But yeah, you can brute force it, or you can try to be, a good spy and not get seen or anything. So there's a bajillion ways to play this game, and that's really cool. Yeah. I'll still beat the living crap out of all of the cops, or all the agent guards, whatever guards, 100% of the time. But I do like that you can play it in not that way.
Yeah, it's a great trait.
Yeah.
Great trait, 8 out of 8.
8 out of 8. Oh, jeez. Our denominator changed. It's now no longer out of 100. It's out of like 80. Gotta do math to figure out what percent you actually got. Anyway, so for my final point is For my final point, I would say the branching paths is just, it's something that many games implement. Mass Effect. I was like trying to scramble together a really quick list of examples, and realized my brain fried after the first one.
What's
Fallout.
funny is that Mass Effect is a terrible example.
It's yeah, I guess you're right.
Fallout's also a terrible example.
God
You're
damn
bad
it.
at this.
Throw me a bone then. Uh,
Uh,
Mass Effect 2? Dragon Age?
I mean, not that many games do it. That's kind of why it's praiseworthy.
Okay.
There's this stigma against doing this
Yeah.
that I think is stupid.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a good thing, like a thing that is praiseworthy, yeah. Because you can totally, I mean, I got Chivos, I got them Chivos this run through because I was letting Sean kind of pilot on the decision making, and I hadn't realized it. I've beaten this game a couple times before. I hadn't realized that I kind of make the same decisions every time. I say I've beaten this game before, but it's like I've beaten it twice over like the last 5 years. So I'm
Right.
still pretty fresh each time I come back to it because you forget things over the course of years. But yeah, no, I end up making like the same decisions at like every time.
I'm glad you admit that I'm superior.
I mean, you did critique me for being an honest spy. It's like
yeah, that's for real though.
at some point during the stream, it's just like, what kind of choices do you make? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I tell them that I did the stuff. Is like, here's the proof that I'm the bad guy. I do. Although to go back to the comedy, I do love that the stuff in parentheses like lie. Tell him that this is like blank or whatever. It's like, I know you're lying, and not just because you put the word lie in parentheses before your text.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, like right before he made that response, is like, wait, doesn't he put that stuff in his text? Sure enough. But yeah.
And that's a great example of things that another like aspect of this game's comedy that it does really well, which is that it does a good job of setting up its humor, because that joke, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. They specifically include dialogue choices shortly before that one that, like, not directly before, but shortly before, that include those kind of parentheticals.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you that jab of like, haha, he responded to the thing in parentheses.
Right.
Just so that they could do later on have that joke of, I know you're lying, and not just because you put lie in parentheses in front of it.
Yeah, it was super.
I feel like it does things like that pretty often, where it really sets up its jokes.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that it's really clever comedy, because we were kind of guessing the whole way of like, because it's like, give him the thing, the real thing in parenthesis, or give him the thing, random garbage, and we chose random garbage, and it was just like, hey, right, it was random garbage in there, and that was our first moment of like, wait a minute, so did he read? Huh. Okay. And so yeah, that was why we were just kind of sitting there like, if we say lie, is he literally going to say lie? Oh man. 10 out of 10. 7.5 out of 10. But yeah, so that's pretty much what I've got on Gunpoint. Boy, I do love its comedy. This is a really good 2D noir game.
Yeah, 2D noir comedy puzzle game.
Yeah.
Stick that in your computer box and smoke it.
Oh, don't smoke, because that's bad
Smoke
for
it.
your health.
I thought you were going to say bad for your computer, but that too, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you're breathing smoke fumes of electric things fuming, it's bad for your health.
Alright, well, this has been DVA Game Stream.
Yep, I think that's a good way to sign off. All right, and 0 drop frames. No, I'm just kidding. But really, though. All right. See you guys later. Next time, I'll drop this one. Next week, I'm gonna be gone, so you're not gonna have a DVA game stream.
Next time, there won't be an episode.
Yeah. But the week after that, boy howdy, we are stoked. I am so stoked. We are starting Final Fantasy IX. So it's gonna be another marathon of a game. It's probably gonna be like another 3 months or whatever. But boy,
It'll be another 14 episoder.
Yeah, but boy, am I excited because man, it's gonna be awesome. I've been really, really wanting to play Zidane, and do you think we should keep it as a surprise, the kind of characters we're playing, or reveal it at like the end of this episode or the beginning of Final Fantasy IX?
I mean, I don't see a reason to like announce it in advance, but I don't see a reason to be secret. So Jackson and I are both familiar with Final Fantasy IX pretty well. We've kind of got like some of the major characters figured out who's going to play what.
Mm-hmm.
So that's neat. That's night.
That's nice.
We're excited.
We are excited.
Final Fantasy IX was Jackson's favorite game for a long time. Still's up there.
It still is.
I
good.
like it mostly. See ya.
See ya.